Hey, everybody. Welcome to the stream tonight. So glad you could make it. It's me, Dr. Plague. If, uh, if the accent wall behind you looks a little bare, don't worry. My oldest son recently moved out, so I'm moving back into my recording studio very soon. I'm just getting some things in order. We'll probably still be recording from here for a little while. Um, or not. I don't know. We may be back in there next week. I have no idea. Um, just kind of taking it as it comes right now. Um, let's see. I finished Shadow People this week, which is Eileen Sheon's latest audiobook. If you follow my work on Audible, it should be available pretty soon. Um, she's being what's the word? They're looking at some of her books to maybe make a film out of. So if you like listening to me on Audible, go check out some of her stuff. Because I'm kind of hoping that if they choose one of hers to make a film out of, then it'll do stuff for book sales. Because I could really use a pretty good windfall right now. Um, Speaking of, as some of you have undoubtedly noticed, I'm still demonetized. I still make absolutely no money off YouTube, which is a travesty. Um, but it is what it is. Um, oh yeah, Winter. My oldest is like 19. Like he'll be 20 in January. He was living with us for a little bit while he got back on his feet, and he's recently moved out again. So I'm putting my stuff back into my office. I can't wait for you guys to see it. I got a brand new bookshelf in there, and I've got it all set up. He left his old desk, so I've got a place to work on comics and things. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a great space. Um, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Um, Still demonetized. They've told me I can put in an appeal in 90 days. So 3 months from now, which thank God I've got a job and I'm not trying to live off my YouTube income because that would have got hectic real quick. If I wasn't already back at the prison, I'd have probably had to go back after that because it's been a mess, and I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid. I see a lot of AI narration channels still continuing to make money, and my content is inauthentic because we have a cozy horror every day. Because I use the same background effect on cozy horror. Because I use the same music on cozy horror, which is just fireplace crackling. Um, because I use like the same five songs in my videos. Like, I have to be very careful what music I put in my videos because a lot of you guys have auditory cues, and some of it's very disorienting. It makes a loud racket, and it's not something that I can keep adding to the video in good faith. Camera was like looking up my nose there. Um, it's not something I can put in there. I can't just throw any music in there. I'm very selective about the tracks that I use, and that means that they've flagged me for inauthenticity because I use the same stuff a lot, which is stupid. It's ridiculous. Like I have I have a sizable fan base. Sorry, I'm getting a little heated here. I've swallowed a lot of dust today. Um, I have a sizable fan base. They want content. Like I put that content out. That used to be all that YouTube cared about is they wanted content. They wanted videos. They they wanted you to consistently put stuff out. And it's ridiculous now that they're gutting their narration community because it's not just me. There's dozens of other narrators that I see on Twitter and TikTok and um Instagram, everywhere, who are saying they're also demonetized. And it's silliness. It's you're gutting one of your largest communities that's been there since the start. Hey Kathleen, we're glad you could make it. I gotta remember to say hi to people. And I mean, I'm up on my soapbox here. Sorry guys. I think it's silly. And I think half the problem is they won't have a real person go have a look at it. Because anytime you talk to anybody, it's all AI. It's all AI prompts. It's all digital assistants. Nobody real is looking at the videos. I'm still weighing options. I'm probably going to go over to Spotify. I'm not going to stop uploading things to YouTube. It's got a lot of eyes, and it's a way to send people to other places. But I'm probably going to go put stuff on Spotify. Probably start putting stuff back up on TikTok a little more. I don't really want to go to Rumble. I don't disagree with Rumble's politics. I don't disagree with Rumble's politics. I'm neutral on politics. I don't give a shit about politics. But there's trying to think of a family-friendly way to put it. There's some people on Rumble with some ideas that I don't agree with, and I don't want to be associated with them. However, they don't run in the same communities that I do. And I know that Rumble's got a bad reputation, and I don't really want to be a part of that. But right now, I'm putting videos wherever they'll go. Like, and I know how that sounds. I'm a very apolitical person. I don't like to get involved with it. But I may go there too. I'll probably just start putting up videos in a lot of different places and seeing what bites. Oh, if I could get on Sirius, Leia, I'd do it in a heartbeat. That sounds great. Excuse me. But I see a lot of people going over to Spotify, going to other platforms. And I mean, I got to chase that, I guess. I got to go do something. Right now, I'm in a position where I don't need the ad revenue, but the ad revenue was nice. Long way around, what I'm saying is, if you want to support the channel and you aren't already, consider going to Patreon. Consider, I don't know, going and we've already got a presence on Spotify. Like, go have a look. There's not a lot up there. I haven't updated it in a while. I've been lazy. I'll be the first to admit I've been real lazy about it. It was something I had intended to do after I retired, and it was just something I never got around to. Like, I need to be more diligent about it, though. Like, it's come to a point I'm going to have to start being more diligent. But, if you want to support the channel, go to Patreon, go to Amazon and buy some books, buy some stuff on Audible. I don't ever ask you guys for money. I would never ask you guys for money. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to make money off of this. Money is incidental. I do this for the love of the game. I like narrating stuff. I like writing stories. It's fun for me. If I make money off it, that is incidental. But I know that some of you guys have talked about supporting the channel during the demonetization nonsense. That is the best way to do it. Or just keep watching, just keep watching. That's a good idea, Kathleen. School is something I may look into. That's not something I was aware of. Might be a good thing to have a look at. But yeah, I'm really hoping to be back to being retired in a couple of years once I've settled some debt and put some money back. But, I don't know. We'll see how it works out. Hopefully YouTube will get their shit together, and I can reapply in July, and I'll put back in, and they'll see what we got going on. But yeah, until then, just shit, just keep watching, just keep watching stuff. I know YouTube looks at that, and if they see that my view counts are maintaining and that I'm still continuing to gain subs and I'm still continuing to have engagement, then what can they say, really? Like, there's not a lot they can say about it. Um, but yeah, I appreciate you guys for sticking around. Appreciate you guys for listening. And I'll shut the hell up about that now, and we'll move on to other topics. Something I am thinking about doing, and I've kicked it around a few times. I'd wanted to see what you guys thought about it and what your opinions were on it. It goes back to what we were talking about. One of the things that YouTube wants to see is diversification. They don't want you to just narrate stories. They want you to jump through other hoops that they can put crap on. Case in point, I'm sure some of you have noticed, Mr. Creepypasta's got a new cryptid series. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's pretty good. I like it. I like running across his YouTube shorts and watching his cryptid series. He does a lot of research and he does a really good job at it. I'm thinking about doing something similar. It's an idea I've been kicking around for a while now. I'm thinking about doing something with like creepypastas in general, like a retrospective or like a breakdown, or maybe looking at some of them and dissecting them and doing a little bit of deep dive, see why they're scary, see why we love creepypastas, stuff like that. I think it would be very interesting. I think people would watch it. I'm not here to critique it. I'm not here to cut anybody down or like talk shit about anybody's creepypasta. However, I think it could be fun to dissect a few of them and look at them and see how they've aged. Maybe eventually, do look at some modern creepypastas. I don't know. It's something I'm considering doing. It would be something to get YouTube off my back so they'll stop telling me that I need more authentic content. I'm going to kick around some stuff on it. I've got some channel ideas for like Spotify and stuff as well. I'm really thinking about doing like if any of you are familiar with like Welcome to Night Vale, maybe do like a Welcome to Night Vale sort of thing, except with John Marvolo as he talks about Kashmir news. Maybe have him talk about some of the things that have been going on in the stories. Just, branch out a little bit, Hey there, Hinge. Just do some new stuff, really kind of shake it up a little bit. When I will find time to do all this, I do not know. The prison's been working the dog piss out of me, but we'll figure it out. Channel's not going anywhere. Content's not going anywhere. Until they... I promise, before they put me in the ground, I suppose I'll upload at least another week's worth so that you guys have something to watch. Hey, Angel. Oh, that's Leia. We will get content. We will get stuff coming out. Speaking of... Hey, Cindy. We're glad you could make it. Speaking of, we finished The Laughing Audience last Monday. 2 days ago, I guess. Excuse me. So, I'm going to hand that off to my editor and let him start combing through that to see if maybe he can get it on point. So, that should be a book pretty soon, I would hope. I'm shooting for around July. I would really like to put out the next Stragview book. I know some of you guys have asked when the next one's coming out. New Stragview book should be out around July. I've got to get my ducks in a row on that. My editor's already got that one in order, so I've just got to give it another go through and get it up. Shouldn't take long. Chickens are good. We're up to 31. 30 chicken. 30 chickens and 1 turkey. Um, Silkies are doing well, and that's good because silkies are hard to keep alive. Um, hey, Michelle, we're glad you could make it. Orpingtons are doing good. All the game fowl are doing good. Everybody's doing. Nobody likes the heat. The heat's really been bothering them lately, but everybody's doing well. um, what was I talking about? Any rate, so with the laughing audience done, we're gonna go back to another one of our series, and well, I don't think I know because I've been writing on it. We're gonna go back to Rayford for a while. Some of you newer guys might not remember, but Shades of Rayford is another one of our Monday series that we've been working on for a while. Um, it's been a minute, so I'll give a recap before we go in. But it's probably going to be Rayford, Shades of Rayford. I'd say probably for the next 5 to 6 weeks. Maybe even the next 2 months. We'll get about 8 stories in, and then we'll call it for a while. Then we might go back to Black Site. We might go back to the park stories. Might go back to the Travel Writer. I don't know. We'll figure something out. We may go back to Bright, but there's been a lot of Bright stuff lately. I don't want to overload you guys on like the Bright stories here. Um, there's always something to listen to on the channel though. But for those of you just joining us, Shades of Rayford is about a fellow whose brother was taken by the Foresters, which are monsters that live in the woods around Rayford. They come out at night. They come out with the fog, and they take people occasionally. We skip ahead a little bit. He was in the army. He was wounded in Iraq. He comes back home under the guise of working in the forest, but really he's looking for a way to hurt the Foresters and maybe get his brother back. He starts working with the loggers that go into the forest. He meets up with a man in town whose name is Terry. Terry's kind of a God, what would you call Terry? He's like a conspiracy nut. Like he's on the town He's not on the town. He is, yeah. He's on the town council. He works for the city paper. He works for the library, and he kind of challenges a lot of the decisions made by the sheriff and the mayor, who are looking really shady. And he recruits the protagonist in to help him prove that there's something going on between the Foresters and the mayor. When we left off, they were going out to the cannery in the woods to see what was going on, and they discovered that a lot of the townspeople are making poison at the cannery to kill the beetles, who eat the crops in town and are just kind of a nuisance. When we left off, the protagonist was going back to get a sample of the poison, and he had been caught by the sheriff. So that's where we're going to pick up today with our stories. So let me pull this up here. This one's called Running Blind, and it's going to bring us back into the Rayford stories. So I hope you guys enjoy it. The two of us just stood there, looking at each other for a moment. It was a moment that seemed to go on forever, but I knew it couldn't have been longer than about 5 seconds. His hand was shaking a little, something I only noticed because the barrel of the gun wobbled so much. He had tried to act tough while he drove me around in the back of his cop car, but I doubted this man had ever actually had to shoot anyone. Not by himself. I'm sure the mayor had pushed him a few times to execute someone for getting... Word soup again. a few times to execute someone for getting nosy, but this was the first time that would be on his head, and he knew it. Let me fix something here. Drop the jar and put your hands in the air, he said, and his gulp was audible. I looked at the jar and then looked at the vial in my other hand. If that's what he wanted, then I guess that's what he was going to get. Quicker than he had expected, I threw the jar at him and ran towards the door that would take me out front of the cannery. He fired, but the bullet missed me by a good 10 feet. That sounds like a lot, but it was still enough to make my spine try to curl up as the corrugated wall behind me made an angry sound when the bullet passed through it. The jar hit him in the chest, but when he started yelling, I realized that some of it might have hit him a little higher. I turned my head just for a second and saw him clawing at his face as the gun fell from his hand. It had definitely splashed him, and I wondered just how corrosive the stuff was. Hang on a second. Got to get our Duke Cannon brand lip balm on so that we don't slur our words like a fucking drunk. There we go. I didn't have long to wonder, because I was out front a moment later, and some of it had trickled onto his face. That's weird. Grammarly makes some really interesting, really interesting word choices. And some of it. And the evening air hit me in the face. I made a sound like an angry cat and had to remind myself not to shake my hand and throw the sample away. It burned. It burned like acid, and I reached into my pocket as I ran, trying to find something to cap the tube with. What I came up with was a piece of paper towel that I had in my jacket pocket, and I prayed it would be enough to keep it inside as I put the vial into the same pocket. Behind me, the whole world was erupting into sound and fury. People were yelling, engines were roaring to life, someone was yelling for a medic, and I could hear footsteps as people started running into the woods behind me. I was still in good enough shape to outdistance most anybody that was pursuing me, but I was also winded and scared and had no idea where I was going. For all I knew, I might come face to face with one of the foresters, and that would be very bad. And that would be very bad. The people in the cannery would kill me, but they'd probably do it quickly. I didn't like to think about what would happen if one of those creatures got their hands on me. It would be pretty bad, that was certain, but how bad was still up in the air. A tree made a weird noise to my left. A tree made a weird noise to my left, and I realized that someone had started shooting at me. The forest was suddenly awash with light as the cannery turned on its spotlights and started hunting for me in the woods. I didn't have time to worry about the foresters. I had to get the hell out of there. I kept running, kept weaving, kept moving between the trees, and before long, I didn't hear anybody behind me. It is the word. It was a wonder that I'd made it out at all, and when I saw a familiar trail, I took it. Somehow I had managed to find myself on the path that Terry and I had taken to get out of here. I got low, and I started moving quietly as I made my way back to the truck. I had a lot to think about as I made my way out. What the hell were these people doing? They were making the poison to keep the beetles at bay, but I suddenly wondered if that was all they were doing. If they were just making pesticide, then why be so secretive about it? If they were helping the town, then why not let everyone know? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. The town would celebrate them for what they were doing. They would probably give them people to help. They would probably give them a place in town to do it, but instead they were out in the woods in the middle of the night, doing something that none of them really understood. No, the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. I stopped suddenly when I heard a branch break, and I got as low as I could. Somebody got closer to my location. I knew how to go unnoticed. I knew how to stay out of sight. But these people had lived here their whole lives, and had likely been in the woods more often than I had. They knew the night sounds, and they knew what they were looking for. I hunkered down behind a tree, putting my back to it in case I had to sprint off in a hurry. And that was probably the only reason that I caught as much as I did. "Could have sworn he came this way," said a male voice that I didn't know. "Did you see what he did to the sheriff?" came a female voice that I thought I knew, but I couldn't place. "That's why they're so anal about safety gear. You saw the burn marks, right? That could be any of us. I told them 100 times that the stuff is dangerous, and they need to swap to something less caustic. It's the only thing that kills the beetles." "Yeah, and it kills us too. You saw how many of us canners get cancer, and you know that's no coincidence. This shit's killing us too. And for what? We put enough poison in the ground at this point that the beetles may never come back. We just keep pumping because the mayor tells us to. What other choice do we have? You know that's the price of operating on Main Street. Besides, the beetles destroy the crops. Everybody knows that. Without the poison, we're back to starving to death like we were a generation ago." "Yeah, well, there's more to it than that, I think." But whatever the familiar voice thought was lost as they moved back towards the cannery and away from my location. I breathed out gently, not daring to exhale the way I wanted to. I'd probably come within a hair's breadth of being shot, and such a thing would have definitely put a damper on my plans to get whatever this stuff was tested. Ugh. Hey, Lori. Hey, Razor. We're glad you guys made it. I nearly cried out as a sudden heat hit me in the stomach, and I put my hand into my pocket to feel the tingle of the vial's contents seeping into the cloth of my hoodie. I tore it off and threw it on the ground, watching as the substance ate through the fabric and started dissolving the fibers. I reached in gingerly and grabbed the vial, now with only a little bit of residue at the bottom, and carefully wiped it off on the grass before holding it in my hand. The sacrifices I made for this town, my sleep, a sweatshirt, the bill was really racking up. I jogged a little on the path. I jogged a little down the path that would lead me back to my truck, and when I was suddenly hit by a pair of headlights, I thought for sure that the next thing I would feel would be a bullet coming in my direction. I thought about cutting left back into the woods, but if they had guns trained on me, they'd have me dead to rights in a matter of minutes. All I could do was sit there like a deer in headlights and wait for the shot to come. "Are you going to get in this truck, or are you going to continue to play statue out there?" came a harsh whisper as the lights cut out, and I realized it was Terry. He must have sprinted out just as they were chasing me, because he had managed to get to the truck before I did. I ran to the passenger side door, and there he was, sitting behind the wheel as if he hadn't just run for his life in the woods at night. He held out a plastic bag, the kind of thing you would seal leftovers in, and I put the vial into it as I got into the truck. I didn't think I would... I didn't think it would hold up, but there wasn't a lot of the substance left in it anyway. I hoped he could get something off of what was left, because I certainly wasn't going back for more. I certainly wasn't going back for more. "Were you seen?" he asked, as he put the truck in reverse and pulled out. "Yeah, but I lost him," I said, trying to catch my breath as the comfort of the worn truck seat finally caught up with me. "Did the sheriff see you?" he asked, and I understood the implications. I had to think about that. If the sheriff had seen me and recognized me, he didn't acknowledge it by name. I was sure that by now he had more things on his mind than the identity of some guy in a hoodie, but I couldn't really be sure. It had been dark, and I'd been dressed in black with my hood up, so it was very likely that he hadn't seen me. Even so, you didn't get to be sheriff of a town like this by collecting bottle caps, and it was very likely that he had recognized me. "I don't know," I said, before I could let it rattle around for too long. "Well, I guess if we get black-bagged in the middle of the night, then that'll answer my question. If you're involved, then he'll have to know that I'm involved too, and nowhere in town will be safe for us. I guess we'll just have to hope that he didn't see your face." "Did you see what that stuff did to him?" I asked, as we pulled back onto the road and started making our way for home. Terry was quiet for a minute, and then he nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, but..." Excuse me. "I got a pretty good look when you threw the stuff at him. He's definitely not going to be winning any beauty contests, and I suspect it might make it a little harder to pick up women down at Buster's with that hole in his face." That prompted me to look down at my hands, and I was shocked to find that what I'd had on my fingers looked like second-degree burns. It honestly looked like I'd gotten a really bad grease burn without all the silly bubbling. The skin had darkened and begun to scar over, and I shuddered to think what it might do if I didn't get it treated. I pulled up my shirt and looked at my stomach, but it appeared that it had only eaten at the hoodie and had left me alone. Seems a little bit of overkill for some bugs. Terry nodded. "Seems like a lot of overkill for bugs. Seems like we might want to get it tested and find out what exactly they're doing with it. We have to make it home first, though, and the night is still young." As we drove through the dark and tried to make our way back to town ahead of our pursuers, I wondered how much longer we could get away with this. I had only to think about the conversation I had heard, as well as the way those chemicals had sizzled, to know it didn't matter. Something had to change here, and that something was going to have to start pretty damn quick. Rayford had a lot of secrets, and the town wouldn't last much longer if those secrets continued to rot the place that I call home. And there you go. That's our first look back at Rayford. I hope it was worth the wait. I didn't realize at the time, but man, we kind of ended on a bit of a cliffhanger there. Oh, was a pretty good one to come back to. Oof. Voice is a little crunchy tonight, guys. Sorry. Been dealing with a lot of dust today, and it's really kind of got my allergies acting up. Let's see. We'll move on to our Kashmir story. As some of you will remember, the book club is making plans to kidnap the writer and convert him, or at least keep him out of their affairs. So, today, we're going to hear the first parts of that, where they, I don't know, start getting their plan together. So, this one's called The Game Begins, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Morning, Sheriff. Sheriff Guthrie looked up from his second cup of coffee and waved at Tyler Durden as he drove his garbage truck into Old Town. Something tickled at the back of his brain, something that said today wasn't an Old Town day. But he dismissed it as the garbage truck rolled on down the road. People could change up the routes. There was no law against it. It was just nerves. Things had felt too tense the last couple of days. He hadn't felt like himself since the council meeting. That was such a strange phrase, not feeling like yourself. Who else would you feel like? Guthrie didn't have any experience feeling like anybody but himself. Excuse me. Try that one again. Guthrie didn't have any experience feeling like anyone but himself. He wouldn't know what any of that felt like in the first place. That's weird, Parks said as he chewed over his bear claw. He had Parks for another couple of days, and then it would be Wood's turn to work with the sheriff. The two of them seemed to work better when separated, even though he knew they did a lot of hanging out on their own. That was unfair, he supposed. They had done a great job of training the new recruits. He had assumed it would be a crap show when he told the two of them to take the new deputies to the range, but they had really impressed him. He now had 7 men claiming to have some experience with a rifle, and their range scores definitely reflected that. One of them was Parks, which was a pleasant surprise. He had told him that when he came... He had told him that when the time came, he would be the leader of that little group, and the two of them were already looking at positions for the snipers to sit and wait. What's weird? Guthrie asked, as he winced. Okay. As he winced when the coffee burned his lip. Well, he only does Old Town on Wednesdays and Fridays. It's a big route, I'll grant you that, but I've never seen him there on a Thursday before. Guthrie nodded, feeling like the deputy had read his mind. Well, I suppose maybe he had a lot to do today. Maybe he's going on vacation Friday, and he wanted to go ahead and get it out of the way. Parks gave Guthrie a look that told him that was a great joke, and when the sheriff didn't laugh, Parks just shook his head. Tyler Durden take a vacation? Never gonna happen. Pretty sure he hasn't done so much as taken a sick day since he got those trucks. From what I hear, he's terrified that someone is going to pick up a couple of cheap garbage trucks and give him some competition. I don't foresee it happening. I just don't think a lot of people are that ambitious. Plus, if you think about it, everyone in town has a spot, and that's his. It would be like me being worried about someone coming into town and being a better deputy than me. It's possible. probably even likely, but the town just doesn't allow that sort of thing. Once you find your spot, you're stuck. That made Guthrie chew over his coffee for a moment, and not just because it was very likely yesterday's reheated swill. Everybody talked about the town as if it were a living thing, as if it were something with decision-making power. Suddenly, he didn't like it so much, and it made him feel a little weird the more he thought about it. People usually talked about towns as if they were living things, but in this case, Guthrie thought it might actually be true. The town was certainly different from other towns. That much was undeniable. Excuse me. Does it seem different to you lately, Parks? Guthrie asked suddenly. Different, Sheriff? Like something might be about to happen. Like we might be at the eye of the storm, just waiting for the winds to start to blow again. It's been very calm lately, other than the martial law, and that's a little bit unsettling. We haven't had any more checkpoints go under, and we haven't had any more sightings of the strangers since last week. Feels like something's going on, like they're mustering their forces for an attack, and I just don't like it. Parks didn't say anything. He just watched the garbage truck roll on and got a look on his face that Guthrie might call speculation. Guthrie turned as an unfamiliar sound cut across his ears and caught the tail end of someone on a beat-up old bike. He saw the cyclist as he went past and realized he knew the kid. Not well, it was just someone he'd seen around, but he knew that he had seen him often. He worked for that bike meal delivery company, but he didn't think he had ever seen him out quite this early. He had the basket on the back of his bike with the logo on it, and Guthrie wondered who was ordering food this time of the morning. It all seemed a little strange, but he supposed life in Kashmir was usually strange. Any word on when the council thinks the strangers will attack the town? Guthrie shook himself out of his malaise, pulling his eyes away from the cyclist to look at his deputy. I haven't heard anything definitive. I realize they're being cautious, but I'm ready for all this to be over. Fighting is fighting. I've shot at people before and been shot back at, but for me, the waiting is always the worst part. It's the uncertainty. It's the not knowing when it's finally going to come. We've been at something like war for almost a year now, and I'm just ready for it to be over. Don't fret, Sheriff, Parks told him, as he gave him what was probably supposed to be a hopeful smile. I don't think this can go on much longer for either side. They're living out in the woods. They can't be doing too much better than us. Eventually, they'll see that it's not worth the effort, and they'll pack up and go home. I've never been part of a siege before, but I feel like there's only so long it can go on before your food runs out, and you either have to attack or go away. Guthrie nodded, thinking that made a lot of sense from a man that had never thought. Nah. Try that one again. I ran together a little there. Guthrie nodded, thinking that made a lot of sense from a man he had never thought possessed a lot. It's just like the siege of Malta. The Knights never thought they could hold out against the Ottoman Turks, but they managed to push them off the island, and Guthrie felt like his coffee might be in danger of spewing out of his mouth. What? The siege of Malta. It's one of the most famous medieval sieges of the period. Guthrie cocked an eyebrow at his deputy. I never took you for a history buff, Parks. Parks laughed. Well, sure, everybody has hobbies. I'm sure there's all kinds of things that me and the other deputies are interested in that you would have never even thought of. Woods actually has a lot of knowledge about Civil War history. Up until about 2 years ago, he was the head of their recreation society. that we had here in town. Interesting kind of interest. Interest kind of fell off about 5 years ago, but I think there might still be a couple of them that dress up. And Guthrie felt a shiver go up his spine as someone made a hissing noise very close to his ear. He turned his head, looking around for the source, but nothing was readily available. It sounded as if the person was standing right behind him, but he didn't see anybody within hailing distance. And the general climate of the town these days was making him jumpy. He was horrified to realize that his hand had gone down to his gun, and he took it off before an accident occurred. "Sheriff! Did you hear that?" he asked as he looked around. "Hear what?" Guthrie was about to describe the noise when he heard it again. It was behind him, in an alley between two buildings, and he turned to see somebody skulking there. The space between the two buildings was shadowy, the roofs creating overhangs that hid the identity of whoever was trying to get his attention. He moved a little closer, Parks coming up behind him slowly, and it wasn't until he was nearly in the alley that he saw who it was. Was shadowy. The writer looked terrible. Whatever he'd been doing lately, he had clearly been through the ringer. He looked dirty, all his clothes covered in mud and grime, and he was missing one of his shoes. There were burdocks and seed pods in his hair, and a bruise over his left eye made the sheriff think he might have fallen down into something. His eyes were darting this way and that, and he looked even more anxious than usual. Guthrie didn't like it. It wasn't his usual neurotic mess self, and he was worried that the man was really about to lose it. "Have you seen them?" The man asked the question as if Sheriff Guthrie should already know the answer. Ugh. "Seen who?" Sheriff Guthrie asked. "The spies. They're looking for me." "Spies?" Park asked with a little laugh. "What are you talking about? Who's after you?" Guthrie thought he understood, but he didn't want to jump to conclusions. The only spies that could be in town these days were for the strangers, and the idea that they might be after the writer was terrifying. He had seen the writer do some things that he didn't fully believe, and it had made him even more mindful of what was going on in town. The writer and the town were connected somehow. That much was obvious, but he had started thinking a little closer to the man. Listening. He had started listening a little closer to the man and taking note of the weird stuff that he said. "Whose spies are after you?" He could feel Parks turning to look at him, his eyes asking why he was buying into this, but Guthrie didn't have time to elaborate. "Spies for the strangers. They're in town and they're after me. They know that they have to get rid of me so they can breach the town. I don't know if they know it for sure, but I know that they suspect it and that it's a danger all on its own. I need help. I need you to believe me. I need... Sheriff, we've got our own fish to fry now. We don't really, have time to get mixed in whatever this is." Guthrie started to agree, but then he looked down at the man and saw the fear on his face. Whether it was true or not, the writer believed that it was, so he had to treat it with a certain amount of speculation and a certain amount of interest. "My deputy is right. We got a lot going on right now, but I want you to do something for me. I want you to go to Dr. Winters and tell her that you need to hide out for a little while. Just tell her what's going on and tell her that I sent you. Let her know that you're in danger and that it might be a good idea for you to lay low for a little while." The writer looked like he might argue with the sheriff for a moment, but his face fell as he sighed and began walking away with the most dejected posture that the lawman had ever seen. I swear, that guy gets nuttier and nuttier every year. What would the strangers want with him anyway? I think they have enough going on right now without worrying about some crazy old writer. Guthrie watched him go, wondering if maybe he should have made time for the man. It was lost a moment later. Guthrie really did have a full day, and he needed to get about it. There was a lot to do before their guests decided to arrive, and he fully intended to be ready. Alrighty, that's your Kashmir story for the day. Ugh. Let's see. We'll go ahead and get our grandpa story out of the way. I know I've been throwing a lot of grandpa at you guys lately, but I don't think you guys will mind too much, would you? Did we... Yes. Where are those glimmer lines? Let me grab my glimmer lines real quick. I thought I had them already, but I guess I did not. Oh, I need the other. Okay. Oh. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the excuse me, the Kashmir stuff lately. I'm not trying to speed run through Grandpa here, but we definitely want to get his story out there. Let's see here. Alright. Let me find the right ones here.
Well, I'd hate for people to come looking for a mysterious problem. I did. They had gone pretty far from them.
2 shakes, guys.
I want to come.
Okay, that's got it. Alrighty. So. Oh. Well, Leia, we're glad you stopped by. We'll have to catch her next time, I reckon. Anyway, so let me pull up some stuff here. For those of you who have been sleeping on Grandpa lately, Grandpa just got out of the hospital. Marcus has discovered that he has cancer and that he's been hiding it from him. And now we're going to move on to Grandpa settling some business with some of his other children. So this one is called Dinner at Javier's, and I do hope you guys enjoy it.
I want to come with you.
That's what we need right there. Okay. I want to come with you. It was the earliest I had ever seen if I could read today. It was the earliest I had ever seen Glimmer come out of the woods, and I was honestly touched that she wanted to come out bad enough to risk the sun. Grandpa and I had been preparing to go to dinner with my parents and my uncle. It was something we'd been planning for a while, a way that Grandpa could tell them what was going on without scaring them too much. I had to figure that most of them had expected the old man would eventually croak, but it was still something we needed to do. It was also going to be a three-ring circus that I did not want Glimmer to be a part of. Glimmer's nature was that of a warrior, and I was often glad for it. As someone who relied on magic over muscle, I was often glad to have a barbarian princess at my side who could put down threats 3 times her size without batting an eye, but this was not going to be one of those times. She wanted to protect Grandpa and me from my family, and such things could go very badly if my very opinionated fiance met my very boisterous mother. Let's see if it'll... You'll get to meet my parents, but tonight is probably not going to be the best night for it. We're going to be talking about Grandpa's estate and what we intend to do, after he's gone. Tonight's going to be pretty bad, and I don't want them to meet you like this. She crossed her arms and poked her lip out. For someone that had... And for someone I had seen gut brown bears out in the middle of the woods, it was just about the cutest thing I had ever seen. Really? Of course, the audacity's being stupid. You can't stop me. If I have to follow you all the way there, I will go with you.
You can't stop me. If I have to follow you all the way, there I'll go with you.
All right. Honey, this is going to be bad. This is not how I want you to meet my parents and for them to remember you. There will be other times for this, but right now, I just want to survive. When all this is done, we may have some time to go meet my parents formally in a place where they're not going to immediately hate you. Tonight, however, I want you to stay here. Please? I added, as if the pleasantry would make the medicine any easier to swallow. She looked ready to argue about it, but then finally shook her head and kissed me on the cheek. You can be particularly infuriating sometimes. It's not as if I would bash your mother's head in if she were to insult you.
Particularly infuriating male sometimes. It's not as if I would bash your mother's head in if she were to insult me.
Really. Audacity, why are you making me work for this tonight? I swear. Okay then. Okay then. Alright then. Sorry guys, Audacity's being stupid. Give me just a second. No, that's cool. That's exactly what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. Okay. She looked ready to argue about it, but then finally shook her head and kissed me on the cheek. Okay, that's got it. I'm not so sure about that. My mom can be... That's getting annoying. Please stop doing that. I'm not so sure about that. My mother can be pretty insulting. She kissed me on my mouth then, and the kiss was full of heat. "Come on, I'm not getting any younger, less sick in here," Grandpa yelled from the cab of the truck. I blushed, gave her a last hug, and climbed in, telling her I would tell her about it later that night.
You'd better, or else I might bust your head in.
Yep. Okay. No. No. All right. Okay. Sure. Sure, Audacity. All right. There. You happy now? Can I continue, Audacity? That'd be great. All right. You better, or else I might bash your head in. With that, we pulled out of the driveway and began to head towards Javier's Mexican experience. Javier's was a place that we liked to go for special events. It was a place for anniversaries and for birthdays, and I figured the atmosphere might make the news a little easier to swallow. I was hoping so, at least. I hoped that my mother and my uncle wouldn't make a scene in the middle of a place they liked to eat regularly. Grandpa coughed beside me, and I cast a quick look at him as we headed out. Grandpa, well, he had deteriorated in the last couple of weeks. His mobility was almost non-existent, but he had insisted on walking to the truck all by himself. It had taken him about 45 minutes to do so, and I had insisted that he bring his cane. He didn't want to. He said that was for old people, but I was pretty insistent, and he finally gave up. Excuse me. It wasn't his legs. His legs were still as hardy as ever. It was his lungs. Grandpa just got out of breath so easily these days. He seemed to be fine as long as he was sitting, but when he was moving, it was hard for him to get any wind in him. I hated to see him this way, but I knew it was only going to get worse before it got better. "How do you think they're going to take the news?" he asked suddenly, as we turned onto the road that would take us to Javier's. "Hard to say. You should have told them months ago. I get not telling me. You were afraid I would fuss over you, but you should have at least told Mom. You know how she worries about you." He chuckled and then coughed and spat into his handkerchief. "It wasn't you I was worried about fussing over me. Your mother is a world-class fusser. She would have come down to live with me if she knew. She would have made your life hell, I'm not afraid to tell you. I lived with her for 22 years. I remember how much of a pain she can be sometimes." We rode in silence for a few minutes, both of us dreading what was about to come. "It reminds me of my own grandmother's passing," Grandpa said all at once. "I thought you weren't there for that." "Oh, I wasn't. I was too young to be there for anything like that, but I wished I had been. The idea that your grandmother died in such a way always made me feel terrible. She needed somebody to be with her. She had been with so many others when they were dying that it only seemed right that she had somebody to hold her hand and tell her everything was going to be okay." I reached over and grabbed his wrinkled hand. "When the time comes, I want to be there for you." He smiled at me. I, I would expect nothing less. When a teacher dies, they say the student truly comes into their power. I would hope that a little of mine would pass on to you, so that the transition would be even smoother. I wiped my eyes as I steered with my knees, our hands gripped together as we drove to the restaurant. Something I've always wondered about, I asked, more to change the subject than anything. Why didn't Mom or any of her siblings get powers? Hard to say. Sometimes it skips a generation. I got lucky. I had your grandmother to help me figure out mine. Now, hang on. Try that one. I got lucky. I had my grandmother to help me figure out mine, but I had honestly expected that either your mother or your uncle would have seen a little of the gift. I think your mother has a little, but it's nothing more than a lucky guess now and then, or maybe a spark of intuition sometimes. I think she resented it. She always rolled her eyes at me when I talked about exercising spirits or using my gift. But she's seen you use them. She knew you had actual powers. Didn't she? Grandpa shrugged and coughed again. When she was a child, yes. When she was a child, she still wanted to learn, but when it didn't come to her as it had come to me, she decided it was a trick. It was something I was using to mock her, and she grew disinterested. Frank thought it was neat when he was younger, but he stopped believing in magic long before she did. What is it that they always say? Strong men make easy times, and easy times make weak men, and weak men make hard times, etc., etc. My kids grew up with a distinct lack of magic. Their lives were so different from mine, and maybe that's a good thing. It led you to discover power, and I think that might be even better. Why do you say that? I asked as we turned into Javier's. Your mother can be hard enough to deal with without magic talents. I laughed as I pulled into the handicap spot and went around to help him. His cane crunched against the gravel as we walked, and it would be easy to take a tumble out here if I weren't paying attention. I came in right behind him, the door revealing a festive atmosphere. Families were laughing, enjoying each other's company, and it was an interesting contrast from the group we were going to meet. Excuse me. It's weird, but I don't think I've talked much about my family. Grandpa is generally the most genial of them, and it only gets worse from there. My mother is a large woman in her late 50s. She was a nurse, but she managed to retire a little early so that she could spend more time on her favorite hobby, which I assume is spite. I know that's a terrible thing to say about your mother, but, well, it fits. I was afraid to play sports as a kid because the couple of times I did, she would fight with officials or other parents. She had no time for anything that wasn't extracurricular or something that would help me get into college. She was an attack helicopter of a parent, and my dad mostly just sat back and let her do what she wanted. My Uncle Frank is okay, I guess, but he's always had a high opinion of himself, and it makes him insufferable sometimes. Try that one again. Insufferable sometimes. He's a college professor, a teacher at one of those schools you have to have competitive grades and a glowing transcript to get into. And he likes to spend family dinners discussing things that none of us can do more than nod and make thoughtful noises about. Luckily, Aunt Kay hadn't made it, so I wouldn't have to listen to her brag about going here or there with her new boyfriend. She was a travel blogger in the same way that I was a grand wizard, and all 12 of her followers had really inflated her ego. Mostly, she just attached herself to men and then went with them until they got tired of her, something that usually didn't take long. I love them, all of them, really I do, but sometimes I just want to scream. By the look on Grandpa's face, you could tell he was preparing for trouble. But they were his children, and he owed it to them to be honest with them. "Molly, Frank, good to see you. Regina," he nodded to my uncle's wife. "Rowan, always good to see you as well. I see Kay couldn't make it." "Kay is in Bermuda with one of her male friends. I swear I don't think she's stopped since the divorce. She's always off on some adventure or another." We made small talk, ordered some drinks, ordered some food, but I think they noticed something was off pretty quickly. Grandpa was sticking with water, he was eating very little, and he wasn't engaging in conversation more than he had to. The coughing was a dead giveaway too, and it didn't take long before Uncle Frank cleared his throat and put down his fork. "Dad, are you okay? You look terrible, if you don't mind me saying so. Is something wrong?" Mom looked up from her quesadilla, and as Grandpa wiped his mouth, I saw the old steel. I missed a word. And as Grandpa wiped his mouth, I saw the old man steel himself for the blow. "That's actually why I've invited all of you out to eat. I've received some news, and I think you all should be aware of it, and what's to come after it." I saw my mother and my uncle sit forward a little, their eyes hungry and expectant. It wasn't entirely pleasant to see people you're related to look at someone like that. "It appears my time is up. I'm dying, and it's not coming slowly. I've only got a few months left, and I called you here to discuss what happens afterward. I've written in my will that each of my children receive an inheritance of $10,000 upon my death, but what I'm most concerned about is my house and the things within." They were practically looming over the table now, a pair of jackals waiting to chew the fat off a corpse. Excuse me. "My records will go to Kay. My cast iron will go to Molly. That paintings will go to Frank. My—" "Stop dancing around it," my mom finally snapped. "Who gets the house and the land?" Grandpa smiled, as if he had only been waiting for her to ask. "The house and everything inside it will pass to Marcus. He's stayed with me through the last few years of my life, and I want him to take my legacy when I—" The table erupted into barely restrained upset. My uncle and mother were strenuously objecting. My aunt was trying to calm my uncle down, and my dad was eating as if nothing had happened. "You're going to leave all that land to a child," my mother blustered. He'll lose it inside of a year, or he'll forget to pay taxes, or he'll. My uncle half yelled. It's too much responsibility, my mother added. He isn't ready for something like this. He's. The glasses shuddered when Grandpa slammed his hand down on the table, and both of his children leaned away like they'd been struck. It seemed the old man still had some fire left in him. Now, that is enough. This is my decision, and I've made it clear to my lawyer that if any of you make a fuss, you get nothing. Marcus has been taking care of me, and we've grown very close. I think he deserves the knowledge I've gathered over the years, and I believe he can use it more effectively than any of you. Uncle Frank sat back, grumbling as he rolled his eyes. But Mom's eyes suddenly got big as she looked at me, really looked at me. She looked like she'd never seen me before, and she started shaking her head as she turned back to Grandpa. Oh my God, you've taught him, haven't you? You've brainwashed him into thinking he can do all those silly things you used to do when Frank and I were children. It's not real, Mark. It's all just cheap tricks. He's convinced you you're special, but it's all a lie. You'll find that out after he's gone. He takes all the tricks with him, and then you'll need someone to clean up the pieces. Well, don't worry. Stop it, Mom, I shouted, standing up so she'd stop looming over me. You wanted me to go live with Grandpa. You wanted me out of the house so I'd stop embarrassing you and your other successful children, who aren't there, by the way. Well, I went. I helped. I learned things, and now I have a purpose. The things Grandpa's offering aren't free, Mom. They have expectations. Expectations you can't begin to understand. I understand them. They're my burden to bear. I found something real. Grandpa has made me into more than I was, and I'm finally ready to do something with my life. Uncle Frank threw up his hands and said he was leaving. My aunt trailed behind him, and Grandpa rose as he said it was time for us to leave too. He grabbed the bill, saying he would take care of it, but as he stumped to the front, he turned and looked. Excuse me. He turned and looked at my mother severely. This is my will, Molly, and for once in your life, please respect that. He paid the bill. I helped him to the truck, and we rolled out of the parking lot in silence. Well, that went about as well as I'd expected, Grandpa said. I didn't say anything, just kept my eyes on the road and drove on. They may contest the will, but I doubt it. No, that's Grandpa. Sorry. They may contest the will, but I doubt it. I kept silent, the trees flying past. Well, come on, boy. Speak your mind. You could have told me you were leaving it all to me, I said sullenly. Grandpa shrugged. What? And ruin the surprise? Why would you leave the house and the land to me? I'm 24, Gramps. I have no business owning anything at this point. They were right to be mad. It should be theirs. That house isn't just a house. It's a sanctuary. It's warded against the things that will hunt you when you start fighting them. And it's no good to any of them. If you are to keep fighting, you'll need a place like it. A good night's sleep is sometimes a hard thing to find, and you can't put a price tag on it, kid. The knowledge and the weapons there will also be of use to you when they can no longer help me. We rolled along in silence after that. I was thankful for the gift and the vote of confidence, but I hoped Grandpa hadn't made unnecessary trouble for me. I intended to continue his fight. It wasn't what I'd been trained for, but a time after Grandpa wasn't something I liked to dwell on. There you go. That is your Grandpa story. Hang on. I gotta do some hunting and a pecking here. Hang on. Okay. There we go. Alrighty. Goodness. Ooh, excuse me for just a second. Let me see who called me. Alrighty, let's see. We need some short stories. I think we're going to read the two new ones, and we'll save the other one for next week. Let's see. Okay. So, our Tuesday story is going to be a story about drinking, as so many of my stories are. This one's about a particular kind of drinking, I guess, and about what people collect. Okay. Let's see. Okay, don't need the clear lines anymore. Anywho, alright. It's about the spirits that follow people when they get to drinking. So, it's called Spirits. And I do hope you guys enjoy it. Alright, it's called Spirits, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Come on, man, just come out for a little bit. Harry, you know I don't drink. It doesn't mean you can't come out and have a good time. I hear Debbie's gonna be there. I know she's got a crush on you. Yeah, but I'm just not feeling very well. I think I might stay in tonight. Don't give me that crap. You stay in most every night. Just come out with us and have fun. Just for a little bit. You don't have to stay all night, and you don't have to drink. But we are your friends, so come out and have a good time. I growled as I shifted the phone to my other ear. Harry was really laying it on thick tonight. Okay, but just for a little while. I've got an early day tomorrow. All right. Maybe we can even get a little booze in you for a change. I'll see you at the lounge then. 7:30. Don't be late. I told him I wouldn't and hung up the phone. I turned to the mirror and saw it hovering over my shoulder. I looked away before I could make eye contact with it. You couldn't hear what it had to say if you didn't make eye contact. That was a lesson I had learned a long time ago. I'm not opposed to going out and having some fun. I like my friends, and I like if I could talk today. I like my friends, and I like hanging out with them, but the problem is that I know a little more than I should. I can see a little more than most people, and it makes having friends and being in relationships very difficult. Someone would say, some would say, some would say almost impossible, but I've managed to stay with Harry and his group of friends longer than most. Harry's problem is that he likes to drink, and that's where most of my problems come from. Ever since I was little, I've had this strange kind of sight. It's the kind of thing you don't realize until you see it, and it never seems to go away, no matter what I do. I think it started with my father, as most of my problems do. My mother had spirits too, but hers were quieter than most. They were these drab little phantoms, little more than wisps, that whispered about how unhappy she was. Mom was such a bright woman that it never made a lot of sense for her spirits to be so unhappy. My father, on the other hand, was mostly intoxicated. He worked at the docks during the day, doing manual labor, and when he got home, it was after stopping at the bar or stopping to get a six-pack on the way home. The six-packs became 12-packs, and pretty soon he was coming home drunk so that he could drink some more. Mom never seemed to mind. She always just tried to make the best of it. But Dad he'd get so angry sometimes that there really wasn't any way to ignore it. He broke my arm when I was about 5. Just grabbed me up after I reached for something. The worst part were the spirits that hung around him, and the secrets that they would whisper. I hate my family. I should have never stayed. I should just disappear. Sometimes I think about killing them. Dad... Shoot. Dad was how I figured out about my strange ability, and it's something I don't talk about very often with people. I can see the spirits that hang around people after they've been drinking. Some people have more ghosts than others, but every time you consume alcohol, it adds a spirit to your menagerie. Harry has thousands of them, a regular cloud of ghosts that hover around him and seem to take up almost everything else. It makes it hard to concentrate on conversations or games or whatever it is we're doing. But the real problem is eye contact. Like I said, anytime you make eye contact with them, they tell you a secret about the person. That's how I know that Harry ran over his dog when he was 16 and blamed it on his older brother. That's how I know that Harry used to steal money from his mom when she was asleep. That's how I know that Harry got a girl pregnant and left her and the kid in a different town before coming to live in ours. It's hard knowing these things, and the more people that are around, the more likely you are to learn something really terrible. Take Harry's friend, Denny. Denny is a nice enough guy. He's clean cut, he has a pretty good job, he owns a car, he's married with kids, and he seems pretty well put together. The problem is that Denny also has a lot of spirits that hover around him. That's how I learned that Denny likes to perform vivisections on animals while they're still alive in his basement. That's how I learned that he sometimes steals people's mail and packages. That's how I learned that he was running an identity fraud scheme over quite a few different victims. That's how I learned that Denny smothered his younger brother when they were still kids. People look like they're put together, but when you can see their secrets, it really changes them in your eyes. I got ready, as little as I wanted to, and met Harry and his friends at the bar about 5 minutes early. I didn't rendezvous with them at first. I had to psych myself out in order to make it through the bar. Bars are the worst. Everyone's drinking. Everyone's having a good time. And it's like stepping through a forest of broken glass in order to find what you're looking for. Their secrets bombard you like bees. And sometimes I have to close my eyes and just hope I don't bump into anybody. She doesn't love him. He sometimes beats up prostitutes. It's not his kid and he knows it. He hit a man on the way home one night and never went back to check on him. He killed 13 people, and he's looking for number 14 tonight. Hey, you finally made it. Harry came up and threw an arm around me, already reeking of alcohol. I tried not to notice, like I always do. Denny was already there, as was Debbie, and Harry's other two friends, Reggie and Mark. The table was a little crowded with all the spirits hanging around them, and it made me feel claustrophobic, as it always does. Thanks, Blondie. I appreciate that. It's another one of those play-on-word stories. Hey, you, Debbie said, as she gave me a smile and waved at me. I waved back, trying to be polite, but it's hard when I could hear her own spirits whispering her secrets. She had put her mother in a subpar nursing home after the dementia had made her nearly catatonic. She kept having abortions, not out of practicality, because... if I could talk today. Not out of practicality, but because it was something she enjoyed doing for some reason. She would stay with men, sometimes just to have a safe place to live for a while, which wasn't so bad until you also heard that she would steal from them before finally leaving them. She had stolen medication from a relative once, her great aunt, and when the woman had died because she couldn't get it, she'd felt bad, but she hadn't told anyone. These were the heavy ones, but they weren't all that she had either. Are you okay? I always forget how much crowds weird you out. You always look like you're about to start running, she said, which elicited a laugh from everyone else. Harry and Debbie were awfully chummy tonight, and I could hear her spirits talking about how she had intended to stay with him for a while so that she could swindle a little more money before she moved on. Harry had pretty terrible taste in friends, and I certainly wasn't immune to that. All of his friends seemed to need money or need things, and Harry was just too nice a guy to tell any of them no. They'd bleed him dry and then probably leave him with nothing, but Harry never complained about it. He was glad to help people. That was probably why he was still hanging out with me. It was the reason that I kept agreeing to things like this. Sometimes I like to make sure that Harry didn't get in over his head. Sometimes I like to keep an eye on him and make sure that he had a safe place to land when the smoke cleared. He would do the same for me. I knew he would, but being in Harry's house was like being under constant bombardment. It would mean constantly being with his demons, and I just couldn't do it. If that makes me weak or selfish, then I'm sorry, but I just can't live that way. I sat and listened to them, listened to the spirits, and listened to my friends, and tried to walk out of... Goodness. Walk out. Block out. Block out the chorus of angry ghosts hanging around the patrons. It was like sitting in a high school cafeteria and trying to listen to one specific conversation. It was nearly impossible to do, and the longer you tried, the more crazy it made you feel. It was maddening, listening to all those voices raised at once. And when I finally got up and told them I needed to go to the bathroom, they laughed and said it was probably about time for me to head out anyway. They were right, but I couldn't head out until I had bolstered up enough courage to walk back out of the room. The trip to the bathroom was bad enough. He cheated on his wife. She's married to 3 men. She has an STD. He has cancer and refuses to do anything about it. The ghosts screamed at me as I ran to the bathroom, and only when the door was locked behind me, I finally felt like I could breathe easy. This was why I never went out. This was why I never interacted with anyone. This is why I usually don't have friends. There's only so long I can take it until I feel like I'm going to go insane, and it takes me a couple of days of staying inside before I'm able to interact again. Excuse me. I went to the basin to wash my face, and that's when I looked up and saw the one hateful spirit moving around my own head. He was old, a spirit I'd had since I was a kid, but his voice was just as sneaky and clawing as it had always been. You killed him. You killed him and you liked it. He was right. Of course he was right. The ghosts are always right. I was 17 when I came home from a chess club meeting and found my father beating my mother in a drunken rage. He had hit her before, he'd hit me too, but this wasn't just slapping her around and then falling back into his armchair. Sorry. Allergies are really kicking up tonight. This wasn't just slapping her around and then falling back into his armchair for another drink. He was towering over her as she sat huddled on the floor. Nah, not really. He was raining down blow after blow as she covered her face and begged him to stop. Her nose was smashed flat against her cheek. Her eye looked like raw meat after so many beatings. And he never even heard me when I came inside. He was yelling about something, probably dinner being burnt or her getting a phone call from someone, but it didn't matter. Something inside me snapped, and I realized I'd had as much of this as I was going to take. I grabbed up Mom's cast iron skillet from the stove, and that's when he heard me. He turned mid-punch and grinned at me with what he must have thought was a terrifying look. His eyes told me that he knew I wouldn't swing it. His eyes told me that he knew I didn't have the guts to do anything about it. His eyes told me that he expected me to drop the pan and say I was sorry and take my own section of a beating from him. But on that day, he was wrong. I brought the pan down across his face, and it broke his cheekbone and his nose in one swipe. I thought about stopping at that, but I didn't. He started to slur something at me, probably something hateful, but I hit him again in the side of the head, and he went down in a heap. I hit him 5 more times, each one wetter than the last, and when I finally stopped, I started to cry. I realized what I had done. I knew I had killed him, but I cried because I felt so righteous about it. I'd enjoyed killing him. I'd enjoyed killing this man that had tormented me every day since I was old enough to understand. He had needed to go, and I had taken him out. Mom helped me bury him under the house. I remember going into the crawl space and digging a hole, and the two of us putting him in there and covering him with lime and concrete. We had covered the concrete with more dirt, and both of us had swore never to speak of it again. That night, was the first and only time I had ever had a drink. The bottle was just sitting there on the kitchen counter, a bottle of whiskey that Dad had probably meant to drink that night. I looked at it as I sat at the kitchen table and tried to make sense of what I had done, and suddenly I was just so damn thirsty. I was thirsty for something that would make me forget what I had done, and I poured a glass and took a sip before I could stop myself. It tasted like fire. It burned my mouth. It burned my throat. It made me cough as it slid into my stomach. It felt like I was going to throw up, but as I ran to the bathroom in case I needed to vomit, that's when I saw that I had a ghost of my own. It was the same spirit that I would keep for the rest of my life. And when I looked up, it told me that I had killed my father, and I liked it. I started screaming loud enough that my neighbors called the police. I told them I thought someone was checking around the back door, that it had scared me pretty badly. But even as the officer with the sunglasses took my report, I could see the ghost reflected back in them as he stared at me. He was staring at me now as I splashed water on my face at the sink, same way he always did. I was no better than the rest of them, but I'd still managed to stop at one drink. I swore I would never have another, but sometimes I wonder if it might be easier to handle the spirits if I was drunk. I remind myself that they'll only grow more frequent if I do, and eventually I'll crawl into some bottle, probably the same one that killed my father, and never come back out. It's important to remember that the spirits you consume have ghosts of their own, and to pray that you don't have to see them the way that I do. There you go. That is your Tuesday story. Ugh. I'd say I hope you guys enjoyed it, but I mean, I'm not really sure it's there to be enjoyed. We got one last story, and then I'm going to crawl off and try to find some hot tea, I think. My voice is wrecked. Ugh. Let me sit up a little bit. So, our last story is about a couple of kids that break into a house and discover something a little better than a six-pack and some alone time in the attic. It's called The Sound from Beyond, and I hope you guys enjoy it. It was just supposed to be a fun excursion. Pete and I were going to break into that old house on the corner, the one that's been abandoned for so long, and do a little drinking and see what it led to. Pete and I have been dating for a couple of months now, but given where we live, we had to keep it a secret. Two boys canoodling in the back of someone's car was still grounds for town scandal, and neither of my parents, and certainly neither of his, would have understood any of it. Sometimes it felt like Pete was the only person in those days that understood me, and I was pretty glad for him. Without Pete, I would probably not have made it to adulthood. The house we were going to break into didn't have a fancy name or some kind of weird history. It was a 3-story house on an acre and a half of land that was set in the dead center of the cul-de-sac. It had sat there for as long as anyone could remember. It had an attic, it was supposed to have a basement, and nobody could remember who had built it or why it was abandoned. Is my voice cutting in and out? That's weird. I hope not. Okay. Sometimes people bought it and tried to fix it up, but they always left and claimed the house was haunted. I am doing some cracking there. Sometimes people rented it, but they never stayed for long. They always left too, and most of them said they could hear things in there that they didn't have an answer for. Whatever it was, it had been abandoned for a long time, but it never seemed to fall down. Despite the fact that no one ever lived in it, it always seemed to look exactly the same as it always had. The paint was eggshell white that was going towards dusty brown, and it always seemed just about ready for a new paint job. The railing was always in danger of falling off. The ground was always in need of a cut. The grass was always in need. The grass was always in need of a cut. But not enough to make it past ankle height. The windows always looked dusty. The door always looked slightly ajar. But it was an old house, and that wasn't uncommon. It was mostly a neighborhood curiosity, the kind of place that 100 different ghost stories are told about. But none of them are true. It's a place where teenagers went to smoke and drink and do all sorts of other things. Pete and I made it there just as the sun was setting. I had bought a six-pack from my dad's... Excuse me. I had brought a six-pack from my dad's outside fridge, something he wouldn't miss until he ran out, and Pete had brought a boombox and a lantern. He had also brought a blanket and some snacks, and we were more than prepared to hang out and listen to some music and just be with each other. We hadn't done much more than a little bit of kissing, but you never knew when the mood might take us. To my surprise, the front door was unlocked. I'm not saying that we lived in a rough neighborhood, but most people still kept their doors locked at night. Despite the house being abandoned, I assumed they were trying to sell it. It would be difficult to do if they were squatters living in it, and Pete broke out his lantern as we checked the house for homeless people. We didn't see any, and there was none of the usual leavings behind. Other than cobwebs and dust, we didn't find any beer bottles or food wrappers or old clothes that had been left behind in a hurry. We decided to go up to the attic to hang out, a spot that a lot of kids went to. Try that again. We decided to go up to the attic to hang out, a spot that a lot of kids went to spend time together. The stairs creaked under us as we made our way up them, and it was easy to believe that we might be being watched by spirits. Everyone said the house was haunted, but no one had ever actually seen any ghosts here. We got to the second floor and went looking for the staircase that was supposed to lead us to the third floor. It was hard to imagine why anyone would need a house this large. No one we knew had more than... God dang. No one we knew had more than 2 or 3 kids, and I counted at least 6 rooms on the second floor. The third floor had another 5, and it took a little bit of looking to find the door to the attic. Pete was almost a head taller than me, and he easily reached up and grabbed the pull ring as the stairs came down with a thump. "After you," he said, with a chivalrous bow. I thanked him and climbed up the staircase, with my boyfriend right behind me. The attic was where we found the first evidence that people had been there. There were sleeping bags and beer bottles, flashlights and garbage, and someone had begun carving initials in the central beam of the attic. Grammarly can't spell worth a damn, but God, they love their friggin' commas. We spread out our blanket, turned on the radio, and started drinking as we listened to music. Neither of us were experienced drinkers, and we both began to feel a little tipsy after the second beer. A song came on that I liked, and we danced around a little bit, as we let the alcohol waft over us. It was nice. A nice memory for a boy I would only know for another couple of years. A fond remembrance of a time before everything got so hectic. As I lay my head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat, I opened my eyes when I heard something from the floor below. I tried to close my eyes and pretend I hadn't heard it, but when it came again, it became less of an idea and more of an actuality. "Do you hear that?" I asked, as I looked up at Pete. Pete looked down at me as if he'd been hoping that he was hearing things. "Yeah. What did it sound like to you?" It sounded like someone knocking," I told him dubiously. "Good, because that's what it sounded like to me, too." We turned off the music and just stood there for a moment, listening for the sounds again. We felt a little silly as we stood stock still in the light of his lantern, and as the moments stretched on, I started to laugh a little at myself. It had all been nerves. There had been no knocking, there had been no sound. We had just expected to be found here so that we had... Ugh. Sorry, guys, I'm struggling a little tonight. Expected to be found here, and so we had concocted it. We expected the whole town to come up to the attic and find a couple of boys doing something unnatural up here. It was all just nerves and fear and a dozen other things that I was still too young to explain to myself. I was about to suggest that we turn the radio back on when I heard the noise again. This time I was sure we both heard it. 3 loud knocks from somewhere inside the house. "What do you think it is?" Pete asked. "Only one way to find out," I told him, and grabbed up the lantern and headed for the stairs. "Come on, I don't want to go down there if there's somebody here. Let's just wait and see if they come up to the attic. If they do, maybe we can sneak out while they're, doing whatever it is they're doing." "Don't be a scaredy cat, Pete. It's probably just a rat or something. Or a bird that's gotten into the house. It's bumping against the wall. Let's go investigate. It'll be fun." Pete looked as if it was the furthest thing from fun that he had ever imagined, but he came along behind me as if not wanting to be undone by his much smaller and much less manly boyfriend. The two of us came out of the attic and looked around the 3rd floor. It was just as empty as it had been when we came up, but I thought I heard the knocking again from somewhere lower in the house. It was definitely from the ground floor. That much I was sure of. I told Pete that we needed to go a little lower if we wanted to find the source of the knocking. He nodded, looking for all the world like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo as his knees knocked and his voice cracked a little. It was cute, in a dopey sort of way. We went to the 2nd floor, and that's when we heard the knocking closer. Ugh, God. We went to the 2nd floor, and that's when the knocking got closer. There were 6 doors leading from one staircase to the next, and I'd lifted my lantern to see if I could find where the knocking was coming from when the door to my left suddenly rattled as if someone was knocking from the other side. Six, not 5. I looked at Pete and just shrugged. We assumed it was one of our friends playing a joke. Maybe they had followed us here so that they could have some of our beer, and I grabbed the knob and threw the door open, suddenly hoping to startle one of them. I expected to see Davy or maybe Hank, but to my surprise, the room was empty. There was nothing inside but cobwebs and old furniture. No one was hiding. No one was standing there with their fist raised as if they'd been caught. And one look at the floor told me that anyone hiding would have been given away pretty quickly. The floor was caked with dust, and at that time the dust was undisturbed. I was still looking at the door when I heard another door knock a little way down. It would have been the room next to the one that I was in, and I looked up in time to see it bounce in its frame as the last hit landed on the wooden surface. "Do you think it's a ghost?" Pete asked. "No clue. Come on, let's check it out." No sooner had we opened that door and found another empty room than another knock came from the next door down. We kept following the knocking, each door rattling as we came to the next one, and eventually we got back to the stairs. No sooner had we looked down into the dark mouth that would carry us to the ground floor than the knocking picked up down there. Pete looked like he was getting scared. He was never a big fan of scary stuff, despite being a pretty big guy, but I was curious now, and I really wanted to see what was going on. He followed me downstairs, though. I got the feeling he would have rather run out the front door than gone deeper into the house, though. I looked at the front door, expecting the knocking to come from there next, but instead, the knocking came from deeper in the house. I went a little further and discovered it was coming from a door that led to the dining room. Inside it was a very old kitchen table, the kind that was laid out with a lacy tablecloth that was covered in cobwebs and dust, which made it look even more like something from a haunted house. There were candle holders on the table that were equally as covered, and the chairs had all been pushed in as if they were just expecting dinner guests to arrive. There were still pictures on the wall, even an ancient grandfather clock that sat in the corner and moved not at all. "Hey, Nancy, we're glad you could make it." "Hey, old Augusto, I saw you come in." Ugh, but I was trying to power through there. Where were we? Oh, no, okay. The whole place looked as if someone had lived there just yesterday and hadn't been there for over 100 years. I was admiring one of the pictures when I heard a knock come from the door on the other side of the room. It had to be the kitchen, and when I pushed it open, I found a very large kitchen fit for a handful of servants. The stove, the fridge, the island that sat in the middle, everything was covered in dust and looked as if it had never been used. Some of the decor was in the process of being remodeled, and a few of the cabinets were sitting naked as if someone had been hanging doors on them and just decided it was time to leave. Pete went and opened the fridge, looking surprised when the light didn't come on, but he jumped when another knock came from the door not too far to his left. I would have bet my six-pack that the door led to the basement, and as I opened it, I was rewarded with a dark set of steps that led down into the guts of the house. I had taken a step onto the stairs when Pete put a hand on my shoulder, and I looked back to find him shaking his head. Let's just go back up to the attic. We can ignore it and do whatever you want. I don't want to go into the basement. I don't know what's going on down there, and I don't know what's making that knocking sound. But I'm scared, and I really don't want to find out. I did something I would feel bad about later. I would think back on it years later and realize that he had been terrified, and that I had decided my curiosity gave me the right to be cruel. I looked back at him and told him he was being a baby, and to just come on so we could figure out what was going on. He looked at me like I'd slapped him, like I'd just told him that I hated him. But when I took a step onto the stairs, he didn't stop me this time. He went down into the bowels of the house, and what we found was something a little different than a door. What we found was a huge basement that still had shelves full of things from previous families. Boxes of pictures, old snorkels and inner tubes. We saw sleds and bags of clothes, an ancient washing machine, a shelf full of preserved fruits and vegetables that no one would ever eat, and a huge metal door set into the very middle of the basement. It was set into a wall that looked like someone had ripped it out of a cave. 4 walls of uncut stone, looking raw as if they'd been ejected from the earth themselves. I held the lantern up to have a look at it, and as I did, I heard a loud banging from the front of it. That was where the knocking had been coming from. This was the source of all the noise. I took a step forward, wanting to open it and find out what all this was about. But Pete had suddenly had enough. I jumped when he screamed, a high scream like a cat that had been stepped on, and he ran up the stairs and out of the house like the devil was chasing after him. I took one more look at the door, but I was already going after him before I could stop myself. He went right out the front door and went running down the street, still screaming and lifting his legs in a comical way. I told him to keep it down, told him that people would see us, but he didn't care. He just kept running, and he didn't stop till he was almost a mile from the house. I asked him several times what he had seen that had made him so afraid, but no matter when I asked, he would never tell me. He refused to go back to that house ever again, and I wasn't quite brave enough to go by myself. I think that was the end of our relationship. Ugh. I was mad at him for stealing the opportunity from me, and we just drifted apart after that. We stayed together for another 1.5 years, as much as we could ever be together, but when he told me that he had gotten a football scholarship to go to LSU, he also told me that it was too far away for a long-distance relationship. He told me he would miss me. I told him I'd also miss him. A couple of years later, and I barely remember him, but I always remember that house. It's become something of an obsession. I never went back. I wasn't quite that brave, but I did do some research on the house. People have definitely gone missing in the knocking house. Kids mostly, but the occasional drifter as well. No one ever investigates any of it. The kids are all considered runaways, and the homeless people usually fall into the category of they shouldn't have been there in the first place. The house has never eaten a family, but they all mostly decide it's too weird to stay. They pick up roots and leave, and the house just seems to stay abandoned. It never gets any older, never gets any better, and it always remains. I still dream about whatever was in the basement. I wonder sometimes what could be behind that door, but I still can't quite find the courage to go find out. I spent 8 years in college getting my doctorate in things that most people would call rocket science, I guess. I study string theory and black holes and all that, but I think all of it's been in service to understanding what happens inside that house. Did the people the house disappeared really just vanish, or did they go somewhere else? Is the house a regular house, or is it possibly a way station for things going somewhere else? I don't know. And unless I can find a backbone, I guess I never will. Every time I remember that afternoon when I was much younger and much more naive, it makes me want to go back. Whenever I remember the way Pete screamed when he saw whatever it was in the basement, I know I never will. Alrighty, guys, and that is your stories for tonight. I want to thank all of you so much for coming to hang out with me tonight, and I hope you all enjoyed the stories, and I hope we'll see you all again next Wednesday for more horror stories and such. Whew. Hopefully my voice is back by then. I guess I'll have to take my Claritin or something. Anyway, I do hope we'll see you guys next time, and I hope you enjoyed the stories. Dr. Plague, signing off. You guys have a good one. We'll catch you next time. Bye.